So here we go, we're going to go through the instructions for making your PadFolio. Doesn't matter which design of paper you've got, they all work exactly the same way. So the PadFolio has a tie-up ribbon, opens up to have a little gusseted pocket with a mini pad in, a central main journal, and a little pocket at the side with a tag in it. It also has a pen strap there, eyelets so these can hang down, and this is lovely and tied in. It all folds up neatly, ties up very simply. Let me turn it over so you can see the back, and the back is completely plain because the ribbon is encapsulated inside. You've got all the templates you need to do this, and then at the end of this, after I've shown you how to make one, I'll show you some of the variations I've done and give you an idea of where you can go with the templates once you've finished. Okay, so your templates are all labelled up. You've got the cover and the lining, they are your two main ones. Then you've got your journals, your pockets, eyelets, pages, all sorts of different bits and pieces. The first thing I'm going to do, because we're using the large handmade paper, this isn't sturdy enough on its own, so you're going to need some card. You've got the card in the kit, so all I do to begin with, and this is really just a cheat so that I only end up doing one lot of cutting of each of the elements, is I roughly pop that on top of a piece of white. I don't fully cut it out because I just find doing it this way gives me less cutting out in total, but also gives me nice neat edges. Okay, so I've got a bit of white, so that's the white sturdier card. Now I tend to water my glue down for things like this, just for speed of application. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of my glue in with some water. Just makes it paintable so I can get full coverage, and also means it slows down the drying a little bit so that you've got time to position your paper. You'll notice that when I cut the card down, I kept some straight edges. I don't trim all the way around, I go to one corner. Means that when I line it up with the paper, I've got a straight edge to work to. Okay, so just make sure you've gone all the way to the edges with your glue. See, by watering it down, it just slows everything down. Also means you can spread it like this and you're not going to get any bumps. Now, I find laying this down in front of you and popping this on slightly easier. Okay, smooth it all down and then pop it under your cutting mat for a few minutes just to make sure. Trim off any excess. Obviously, if you want to be really frugal with your paper, you can trim right to the edge, but I'm just doing this for speed. Always overhang slightly. Okay. And then I would just while that's, see already it's gripped, but I just want to give that a couple of minutes, so I just tuck it under my cutting mat while I work on top. Okay, so that's my cover done for now. So I'll start working on the lining. If you have got, because these are handmade papers, if you have got glue on your mat, just wipe it up. Okay, now we can start preparing some of the other bits while that's drying under there. First thing I'm going to do is the lining. Now I've chosen this paper because it's quite nice and bright, and you can sort of see what I'm talking about a bit easier. But it's also the most forgiving in terms of it doesn't overly matter if you get things up the wrong way. But with the lining, I tend to use the reverse of the papers anyway. All of them have got a lovely plain side. So I'm going to just pop my lining template down. So if you are using it the proper pattern side, make sure that you're aware where your pattern is, because you've got your little but if you're using the plain side, it makes life a little bit easier. So all I'm going to do is draw around it first, cut it out. It does cut so beautifully, this. Okay. Nicely up the sides there. Pop your spare paper to one side. Now pop your template back on. And what you've got to notice here are some various little slots. Now I'm going to mark them and then cut them so that you can see what I'm doing, but if you're confident you can just use the template as a guide. So this is the eyelet for the little notebook that hangs in the gusseted pocket. This is the slots that your pen strap's going to go through. This is the slot for your tag, and these are the slots that your ribbon is going to pass through when you come to do the main journal. Okay, so pop that out of the way and then take your knife and just carefully do some little slots. Okay, and that's the start of your lining done. Okay, just make sure you've gone all the way through with a little wiggle. Missed that one, did I? No. Okay. And I actually find at this stage that I start adding my eyelets, because apart from the else, it's keeping me busy while me cover's drying. So let's do some eyelets. Now you can either stick some more of this paper onto some card and do it that way, or you can double the paper over. It's entirely up to you. So just for speed, I'm going to just do some doubled over ones. Okay, so I just take my paper, double it over. Again, I can use my watered down glue if I want to, just to double that over. Okay, and then I just line that up, draw around it, and you're going to need, you actually want 3 of these. I'll explain why 3 in a minute. I'm just going to do 2 to begin with. Okay, so just draw around, cut it out. Okay, just make sure it's glued how you want. Then you can either use a crocodile or a hole punch. I'm just using an old traditional hole punch, which isn't as easy to see where things are, but it does. It's a big old industrial one. So now I can bring this eyelet, pass it through that slot, ease it through, and you see it's locked into place. And then I can just, and it's a lot easier to do these things while the lining is out of your book, because you can get all around it, and it just means you can get everything in position. Just wiggle that, smooth it down. So that's one eyelet in. So we're going to repeat for another one. Put a bit more glue on that. I like doing them out of the paper, but you could easily do them out of the card. And when you start making these in your own style, you might not put the eyelets in. You might, it's so adjustable to your style, which I will show you as soon as I've finished this. Right, so round we go. So we just start getting all the elements together. Well, this is nice because there's plenty to be doing while you're waiting for your main cover to dry. And it doesn't take long, it's just you don't want to When you work with handmade paper, sometimes you want it a little bit damp still, because that makes it easy to manipulate, but you don't want it so soggy that it's going to tear. Okay, so that's that in there. So that's 2 eyelets in. Let's do our pen strap now. I've still got some of this. So I'm going to go double thickness on the paper again. So basically, you're just cutting out, it's like a little bar shape. Okay. Depending what pen you're putting in, I do use the pen to help me now, because that's the pen that's going to be held in. So you can actually use the pen to hold your strap like a clip. Okay, so poke one end through, poke the other end through. So actually poking through is the sort of the trickiest part of this operation. And then I fold them over each other. Don't know if you can see that as easily, but you fold them over so it's creating like a ring. Pop a bit of glue on there. If you're using a good strong glue, it might need sort of 30 seconds to grab. So you can either hold it, or if you're impatient, you can just give it a tiny little blast with a heat gun to start the curing process, and then turn it over. Okay, so that's your pen, and then you can slot the pen out. The only other thing to go in is the ribbon, but I'm not going to do that yet, and I'll explain why in a minute. So although these papers are nice and thick, I don't think they're thick enough to support the main album's ribbon on its own. So when we come to do the main book, although we've got card and paper on the cover, we feel it needs a little bit more rigidity inside. So we're going to make some panels that go on the inside. So you will need another bit. Well, you can sort of get away with some bits. So what I find when I'm doing these panels is you can piece them together from the offcut of your first sheet, but for speed and ease for showing you, I'm going to use a big main sheet. Okay, so I'm going to bring in this big main sheet here. So on your cover template, you will see you have these inner markings. They do become score lines in a minute, but they also allow us to create panels that are going to reinforce our main cover. Okay, so we're just going to mark, and you sort of mark, when you score these, it goes down the middle, but we're just going to sort of mark the inner edge. So just hold your pencil against the template. Okay, so we want to make sure we're getting all these panels. You notice I lined up along the bottom there, so that saves me a cut. But so when you're doing this at home, you can easily fit some of these in your offcuts, but it's just the camera doesn't like it if I go to big white sheets backwards and forwards. It struggles to focus. So if I just do it like this, it just means I'm giving the poor camera a fighting chance. So I'm going to cut these all out. Don't worry about pencil markings showing on this. So this could be any scrap card. It could be, you know, if you're making these afterwards on your own, these could be bits of cardboard boxes. And I say it doesn't have to be the full A3. Really, it's only the cover that benefits from being A3. But even then, you can fashion it out of smaller paper and card just by overlapping pieces. But once you've made a couple using A3, you'll get a feel of where you can overlap. I tend to overlap underneath the main journal because that's the sort of back, and it means that you haven't got joins on spines and things like that. That A3 just makes your life a lot easier. And it is more readily available now than it used to be. Right, so we've got small panel, medium sized panel, the biggest main journal, and then the 2 spines. Right, so they're going to go to one side. Okay. Right, I think we're ready to bring the main journal cover back now. Yeah, so it's nicely covered. If you're using a paper where it is imperative that the design goes the right way, make sure you pay attention to this arrow here. Okay, so I'm going to flick my piece over, because if you now try and imagine this is made up, this is going to fold over. So you want to make sure that your design is right there. Okay, so just make a note of that. So top left corner, top left corner. So you can, when you're at this stage, you can just double check for yourself. Okay, line this up on as many edges as you can to save yourself a bit of cutting. Okay, and then you're going to draw all the way round. All the way round. Feel free to whistle. Don't worry about any other markings for now, because you can lay the template back over in a minute. So it's just concentrate on the edges to begin with. Okay. Right. So I'm going to take that off and I'm going to cut. See, and by covering the card with the paper first, it means I am only doing one cut like this, and this is the more intricate one. Making sure you go into the edges like that. And because we've watered the glue down, the purple is nicely caught. I'm not having to worry about going back in and sticking more bits down. So we're just going round. Just trim off any excess. Some people find it easier to do all the straights like that, straight along, and then come in and do this bit. It's whatever you're most comfortable with, you know, and you don't have to rush this bit. Right. Okay, nearly done. So there we go. Right. Pop those to one side. Now, you're going to pop your template back on. Now, everybody has preferred methods here. I find the easiest for me, take my embossing tool and I literally run it up and down these score lines. I find that's my smaller one, don't know where my bigger one's gone. So if you just go slowly if you've got a fine one. I do have one that fits perfectly in these lines and it's fab. Now this bit here, you see it's a broken line, it's not a solid line. I just want to do a little pencil mark there because that is actually going to be where we're going to cut to pass some ribbon through. And you might want to mark your hole for where the ribbon's going to come back out. I confess I tend to cheat with that and do it at the end, just with my hole punch right through all layers. But you can, it's there for you to do at this stage if you want. You know, it's one of those do as I say, not as I do things. Right, make sure you've scored all your lines. At this point you can now come and cut through there for your ribbon. Okay, just making sure that you've gone right through, because you're going to pass the ribbon through in a minute, because we want to capture the ribbon at this stage, because then that means that you won't see any of it on the back. You've got 3 meters of ribbon, so make sure you give yourself plenty. There's a couple of I did where I didn't quite give myself enough either side, so poke it through. If you need to use your knife just to help ease it through, you can do. Pull it through, making sure that you're keeping it fairly flat. You don't want any twists, but as long as you sort twists out prior to gluing. So I'm just using the knife just to help tease that through. Okay, so pull it and have it. See, I've got a twist there, but I just flip it over. There you go. Fairly even either side. Right, okay, so that's that bit in. Next, I'm going to look at my panels. Now, before I do anything to start gluing these panels in, there's a couple of things that we still haven't covered on this main template. One is on this, let me just move that so you can see. So on this central panel, we haven't done anything with these 2 lines. So I just want to mark those, and I'm going to cut those. These correspond with the same ones on the lining, and it's for your ribbon to pass up through for tying your journal in place. So again, I've been quite generous with the ribbon there. You don't need this much, it's just so that I can make sure that I'm showing you. So again, we're going to pass the ribbon through that hole. So just sort of tuck it through. Once you get a little bit through, it's fine. And this is what I was saying when I was doing the lining. The fact that the paper, as thick and sturdy as it is, I don't think is enough to support the main album. So by putting your ribbon through this supporting card as well, just gives it a little bit more weight, support. And then you just line that up inside the score lines and you can start gluing. Okay, so round the edge of that panel. Okay, so just making sure it's inside the score lines. See, these panels act in multiple ways. Obviously they're making the cover more sturdy, but also it gives you something that you can fold against, which actually helps you when you start manipulating the cover round. Do your spines. And also what you'll notice is when you're lining these up, you are leaving a little groove to create the hinge of the opening mechanism. But you use that groove in a minute when we put the lining in to actually press into, and again it just gives extra support, extra. So this one goes in. If you are doing your ribbon hole at this stage, you don't need to punch it in this one at this point, because you want to go, your ribbon's going to pass through both layers of that. I'll explain that better in a second. I just didn't want you to think that before you glue this on that you should be putting a hole in it. It's a lot easier to put the hole in and line everything up in a minute. Right, so now we're going to start folding these over. Okay, so it's a case of glue, fold, press down. Now you might want just some clips or something just at this point, just to help you hold it if you're trying to do this at speed. But what I tend to do is do the glue along one side first because by the time you've gone back to start folding this one over, the glue's already started grabbing. And then you just going along, folding those over. Okay, once you've got one line folded over, bring something and just crisp up everything. So it doesn't hurt to put some clips and things just to give you an extra pair of hands. I've got an array of clips. Pegs are good. These are really good pegs, these. You can go across. Just to help while the glue dries. It doesn't take long for the glue to grab. So go along. And by doing it this way, and the fact that we've covered the card with the nice paper, it means when we come to put the lining in, if we're not perfect with our lining up, we've still got a decorative edge. We're not seeing white. It just makes it look a little bit neater, even if you're not the neatest person, if that makes sense. Okay. Folding them over. So you see you've got that central panel that helps support these. Okay. Round we go. Just add in a few. Doesn't take long for your glue to go off. It just gives you that time to pass everything around. I'm just folding everything over. If you've got a bone folder, that's fine, but I can never find my bone folder when I need it. Handle of scissors or the handle of my brush is just as fine. It's just to make sure everything's going down crisply. But bearing in mind you're going through card and handmade paper, you won't get a mega crisp edge because you've got that lovely stretch to the handmade paper. So it will always have a softer, almost fabric feel to it. So that's nice. I've got another peg. So I've got an array of things. Right. And just switch everything back round to the side that you're working on. Right, so that's going to need a couple of minutes to dry. So while that's doing that, we'll go back to our lining contents and we'll start making pockets and things. The gusseted pocket I do out of the patterned paper. Oh, that's a nice, that will come out of that bit. But I do reinforce it a little bit. I'm going to have it on the pattern side, and I know, just because I'm trying to be frugal with my paper, you've got enough paper so that if you want your pocket to go with the pattern going up and down, you can do. But I'm just going to go this way just to because I've got a little bit of paper left that's that size. But so you've got plenty, but I know what we're all like. We'll try and get as much out of these big sheets of paper, and you will be saving all these little teardrops and things like that because you can use those as embellishments. And so we're just drawing around that. Probably should have done it on the purple side because that would have made it a little bit easier for me to see. Okay. So just around on there. But I say it is lovely and strong, this paper, and it's fine for the actual gusset part, but I prefer reinforcing the front bit a little bit, just because that's where your fingers are going to be grabbing your little book in and out. Okay, round you go. Then just line your template back up to do your score lines. Where did my embossing tool go? There. Look at the state of this work area. I'll say I'm doing that so that the camera's got something to remain focused on. And that actually sounds quite convincing, doesn't it? So, and then it's just a case of folding forwards and backwards. You see you've got that little spring. That means that you can have quite a nice sized journal in here. Okay. So you can see you've got your little pocket. Now what I was saying about reinforcing, you know those scraps of white I said about? If you just use the inner corner of that, you see that inner bit, just draw around that and that last marking there, which will give you a piece. And I tend to cut just inside the line on this, just so I'm making sure it's a little bit smaller. Okay, and then that will slot into there and just reinforce that pocket. Okay, so pop it in there, and now the sides have got the nice spring, but the front is sturdy, so that you can embellish that if you want. Okay, last little pocket is your tag. Okay, and this time we will have, just to give a little bit of interest here, we'll go with the pattern the correct way. And then for the 2 owl, sorry, let's put that there where you can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm just drawing around it. And then cutting that out. And then I'm going to stick a piece of card to some more, just for the covers of my 2 journals, just because I think it gives the paper a bit of extra strength. So I want to be able to get that one and that one. So that's a good sized piece of paper, piece of card left. Just trim that off. Move these bits. I just want to get this glued on so that I can then, so how's my glue doing? I've got some left. So again, just like we did with the main cover, just because they're covers of journals, it needs a little bit more. So just pop that on. Trim off the excess. So you can see you get plenty of paper left over because there'll be bits in there. So pop that under your cutting mat again. Okay, so tag pocket. So tag pocket, just need to score those lines as well. Hang on, how did I line that up? Didn't draw around that very well, did I? Really didn't draw around that very well. Right, so score line, score line, score line, and then they fold in. So that gives us 2 pockets. Right, let's start main construction. Clips off. They look really fiddly to begin with, but once you get into sort of a routine of, because I've made lots of them, this is why, you know, I've got bits going on while things are drying and stuff. So, right, so your main lining's going to come in, but the first thing I need to do is make sure that this ribbon goes through, because if I forget to do that, I have to peel everything off. And you'll notice that we haven't scored the lining. That just, the reason being, sticking the lining in is you've got a lot of lining up to do. If we don't do the scoring at this point, it actually makes life a little bit easier for you because you've got that manoeuvrability. And because of the way we've constructed the cover, we've got these little gullies that I spoke about earlier. So that means that we can use those to score when we come to do the folding. Right, I tend to now come in and put glue sort of generously into all of those panels, going quite to the edge but not too to the edge. Okay, pop that bit down, press it down, make sure it's sort of lining up. This is what I say, by doing it this way you've got time to manipulate, but also because we did that nice folding over, you see how you're getting a little decorative edge. Right, lift up the other side of the ribbon, bit of glue, out the way clip, bring that down, smooth it down. Okay, so there's for your album. So now we can just, I would give it a good couple of minutes for the glue to dry. You want it to become one before you start the main fold up, because otherwise you'll feel the paper want to pull away. So just give that glue a chance to dry. But I just wanted to show that I can just run my embossing tool down that gully that's been created. Pinch all your fold lines. You don't want to rush this bit. Let's go down here, past the pen bit. You'll find it's like a little channel that your embossing tool will want to follow. Okay, bring one bit up, bring the next bit up. Now this is where I cheat a little bit, because I will now punch my hole through all my layers. Okay, if you don't want to see the ribbon go all the way through, you can punch a hole before you glue that side down. Oh, that's a lot for this little hole punch to go through. Did it though. So if you don't want the ribbon to show there, before you glue that down, you punch the hole and then glue it over, and the ribbon's not shown on the inside. But I confess, I always have my ribbon coming right through. Just, it's easier. It's one less thing to worry about. But that is personal choice. So there you go. That's your main folio made up. Okay, so now we can start adding the pieces into it. So gusseted pocket, so you just apply the glue to the tabs. Okay, position it down, have it sort of folded up, and then when you press it down it will spring back up. So that's your little gusseted pocket there. With the tag pocket, you again only apply the glue to the tab, because then that means that the pocket still, that there's nowhere where the tag's going to get caught. Okay, so that's that. And then we can start making the little albums. Your pen's already in. This is going to come through. You can cut your tag. So you might want to cut 2 or 3 tags. You've got your tag template there. So you could either, depending how much card and paper you've got left over from your album covers, you could do it a covered one, or you could just cut numerous tags and put them in. Entirely up to you. So I'm just going to get that last bit out. Okay, let's do the album cover, main journal cover. So I'm going to draw it. I will explain the 2 markings on this as well. So you have got 2 markings for the holes. You've got these holes and these are the slots. The slots are if you want to do this cut through and the ribbon. These are perfectly spaced for a normal hole punch. So if you want to use a normal hole punch, once you've drawn around it, flick it over and mark on the side that you want. I tend to do, for this side of it, I tend to do the normal holes. Sorry, because I was waving that around a bit. Okay, so that's my album cover. Just trim that up. You've also got some nice 130 GSM white for doing your actual pages. Couldn't think of the word. So this is your mini journal cover. So you see you have got enough there left to do a tag, which we will do in a second. Now the mini journal, I'll only do a couple of pages so that you can see. Let's get my tag in. Yeah, I'll fit my tag in. And by having it as a see-through like this, if you were using a paper and you wanted a particular thing to show, you can see. Right. So cut this out. So I'll only do a couple of pages. Obviously you will do as many pages as you want in your journals, but I'll just do a couple just so that you get the idea. Otherwise you'll be watching me cut out paper ad infinitum. If you want to cheat and use your trimmer or cutter, the pages are 14 centimetres square on the main album and 8 centimetres wide on the small album. I would cut on the small album, I would cut them in a strip, then fold them over and then trim. Right, so there's my tag. Again, I need to put a hole in that. I'm kind of fallen in love with this really ancient hole punch. It's kind of almost sort of steampunky, it's that old. So that's my tag gone in. Right, so mini journal, let's get some paper. So here is this beautiful 130 GSM. I'm going to, just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm just going to fold it in half so that I'm cutting multiples at the same time. Don't use your cover as the template. So let's just, so if you've got a trimmer, this is a good opportunity to bring your trimmer in, but just to show you can do all of this with a pair of scissors. Right, line those up. Now, as I say, so you can either mark the slots and thread the ribbon through that way, or flick it over. I'm actually going to do this on the back here so that I can see. On the heavily patterned paper, it's sometimes easier to do it on the back so you can see. It's such a good chunky noise, isn't it? So you've got your holes gone through. So we can now bring this in, and it's a simple case of threading the ribbon through. And securing it. I tend not to do it with a full bow because it's quite bulky, so I just do like a faux bow, which is just a knot, and then give my ribbon a fancy end. Easiest fancy end, fold your ribbon in half. At the fold, go upwards, and it gives you that neat like fishtail end. So fold the ribbon in half, go upwards. So that's your main album in, your tag is in, and if you want to, you can put your ribbon through and attach it to the eyelet. So it's still got that eyelet there, which is going to have the mini album. Okay, mini album. So now, when I'm doing this at home, I would, as I folded the paper, I would position that and cut like that. but to show you how you can get multiple pages quickly, I'm going to do it the sort of traditional way, which is line the template out, cut this. So you will notice that both our albums in this have the same size cover as they do to the pages inside. That's sort of the tradition of a pad rather than a journal. Generally books and things, the covers are slightly bigger. So then I'm just going to fold all these in half. And where did I put my cover? There's my cover. Now these being paper, I can just fold in half. The album cover itself needs a little bit more oomph. So I'm going to use the template to score, but I'm also going to show you something else about the template, because this little album, this little pad, has a fab joining mechanism. I'm just tucking all those inside. Okay, as neat and tidy as I can. Right, take this. So I'm going to score, but I'm also going to, let me do that with a pencil so you can see. That middle section there, mark with a pencil. Because what you're going to do is you're going to cut that. So carefully, making sure you go through multiple layers. You're going to take the pages, open them up, position the template over the middle, mark that same middle line. Now, if you're not comfortable cutting through multiple pages, clip them together and they become as one, but I've only got a few pages here. So I'm going to cut the same line, okay? Keep those two separate for a minute. Go back to your offcuts where you had your card and stuff. Your eyelet template. Remember I said we needed 3 of these? This is where the third one comes in. Okay, I'm just going to draw around it. Cut it out. So this time you definitely want it onto card because it's going to become the book binding. Okay. It's just such an easy way of joining these pages together. Right. Hole. Right. So take your pages and you're just going to pass that eyelet through all the pages. Now if you want to, you can secure that with a little bit of glue inside. Fold that over, crease it all down. Take your cover, do your first fold, which actually as you fold it helps open up that. And then you pass your eyelet through there as well. And now you've got your little book held with an eyelet which slots into there. And again, if you want to secure it with some ribbon so it hangs, look at the state of this work area, so it hangs out, you can do. Pop your pen in, so that folds over to there, that folds over to there. You can see I did an excess of ribbon here, so tie it up with a little bow. Tidy your ends up the same way as we did inside, but just for speed I'm going to trim off. Keep these excesses because that's what you'll use for doing your tags and things like that. So there you go, one PadFolio made from start to finish, complete with pen, notebook, mini pad. Okay, so that's your PadFolio tied up. What else can you do? Well, let's have a look. So let me bring in some of my variations. Ugh. So This one looks the same, but on this side I've got 2 mini gusseted pockets, and all I did was I made the template exactly the same way, but once I'd folded up the pocket I just trimmed it down, just cut it with a pair of scissors to half size and made it that way. Okay, so exactly the same idea. These ones, where I'm using the patterned paper, I make the cover just in white card and then use the same panels that I use for the lining to create the panels for there. So then you can be a bit more frugal with your paper. So these panels, I don't know if you can just see, they're all stuck on afterwards, same as I did for the panels on the inside. Okay, same idea with this one, except here I've made little character tags, and I had a bit more fun with the journal on the inside. I've made it a bit more interactive, so each of the pages has fold down elements, fold out elements, fold up elements. Okay, and the little book is slightly different, got note paper in it, but the same idea. Okay, this one, again, same sort of thing, tag, and that's all the same, but this time my central album is a bit more interactive. So once you've got the principle, you can really start playing. Okay, next one is a bit fun. Instead of going that way, I've gone that way and made a suitcase. And so I've just done a very simple pocket. So use the template just to give you the size, and I've tied this same place, but just going that way, and made myself a little buckle very simply to join that together. And then the last 2 that I did. So, because the PadFolio has a nice bit of depth, this one I did in a different way. So it opens up, and instead of having the pad there, it's got a dimensional shadow box. So I used the central panel of the template and then just gave it extra tabs which would allow me to fold it up. But yeah, I just made a little box that sits inside, and then I've made that all dimensional. And then last but not least is my favourite. So again, same idea of the PadFolio, opens up, got a tag this side, mini book this side, but in here is shelves. So I used, if I turn it round, it's all got card which is stuck upwards to give me little shelves to create a dimensional diorama inside, but I've still used the other elements exactly the same. Gusseted pocket, tag pocket, and this time the ribbon is sandwiched so it ties at the side just by using a larger panel to extend it there. But all made exactly the same basic book. What you put in it is up to you.